Ladies and gentlemen, it is my sincere privilege to introduce to you our keynote speaker for Cloudera Federal Forum, Travis Sawchuk. Travis?
How is everyone? Who's been to a Nats game in the last year? A lot of Nats fans, or is it more of a transient Yankee, Red Sox kind of mix of? Has anyone caught a foul ball in the last year? Not as many hands. I'm going to help you catch a foul ball. Or big data, advanced analytics, is going to help you catch a foul ball. Before I started working for Fangraphs, I was a newspaper writer, a beat writer for the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review. I covered the Pirates. And I attended about 100 games or so every year, some on the road, some at home. And you go through a stadium, you see a lot of people with gloves. But the chances of catching a foul ball or a home run are relatively low. There's probably 50 or 60 sprayed in the stands every game. There's 25,000 people attending the game. So the odds are low. But you'd see people 500 feet away from home plate with their gloves, hoping for that chance. The bleachers, very optimistic people. But I was at a Tigers-Pirates game last year before I joined Fangraphs, and this one fan caught right below the press box, he caught 4 foul balls. And the Detroit Free Press approached him after the game and wrote a story about him, and it turned out he's caught 300 foul balls in his fandom career. He's a season ticket holder, but he knows where to position himself. And you can position yourself where he positions himself to if you have the information, if you have the data tools. And now that everything is tracked in Major League Baseball, every foul ball is tracked, every ball in play, every player's movement, you should sit in section 128 in Nationals Park. Most batters are right-handed, and that's where most foul balls are hit, in the back of section 128. So whoever you attend games with, your spouse, your kids, U.S. senators, I don't know, but if you want to impress them and have a better chance at catching a ball, go to section 128 in the back of section 28, and that's where you'll have your best chance at catching a foul ball. I know baseball is just a game. You are all involved in more serious matters, from defense, education, health, serious matters. Baseball is just a game, but it is a laboratory of sorts for advanced analytics, for big data. Baseball is data rich. You can isolate variables, pitcher, batter, and you can see the power of analytics and big data in the sport because of the nature of the sport. And I wrote my book, Big Data Baseball, based off the Pirates' 2013 season. It was my first year on the beat as a reporter, and the Pirates were coming off their 20th consecutive losing season. That's a lot of losing. It's a North American professional sports record for consecutive losing seasons. And the Pirates, when I took this job, I thought, okay, they have a good farm system. They could be interesting in a few years. But I wasn't expecting much from them as an objective reporter in 13. And a funny thing happened as the season went along. They kept winning. Most of their roster was the same as the previous season, which was their 20th consecutive losing season. They hadn't added many new parts, but they kept winning throughout the summer. And they broke that string of consecutive losing seasons, and the city fell in love with this team. They're a great story in the region. And it had a lot of people scratching their heads because the expectations were low for the Pirates. They had not brought in any high-priced free agents. Their farm system hadn't begun producing, or most of their top prospects had not emerged at the Major League roster. So how had they done this? It was a great curiosity. So throughout the season, a few things became apparent. And one was they had a more creative defensive alignment. They were shifting more often. Their pitchers were producing MLB record ground ball rates. And it seemed like something systematic was going on here to add value. My curiosity was raised, and that led to the book that season following that team. And that's why I'm here today, to show you how, in the Pirates' case, advanced analytics, big data had very meaningful results. And it can for for your sector of government, for your business. This is the Pirates are a great gateway, I think, to show that. So I'll take you to the beginning of the book, and it really starts with a meeting between Pirates general manager Neil Huntington and field manager Clint Hurdle after the 2012 season. I don't want to bog you down with names and numbers, but they're two of the key figures in this book. And they knew they were fighting for survival after 2012. They'd been there 5 or 6 years. The fan base was getting restless. Again, the record losing streak. And they knew they weren't the New York Yankees. They couldn't go out and get Bryce Harper in 2019. They had a limited payroll. They knew their prospect situation. So they had to be creative. And they met at Hurdle's home in the North Pittsburgh suburbs after 2012 season, and they started to think about what they could do to add value, to create, to improve their efficiency. This is really a story about efficiency and creating value. And what they had realized is that baseball had become, there's this great avalanche of data being produced over the beginning of the 21st century. But a lot of it from the defensive side of the game was not making its way to the field because of tradition, because of biases, because of a number of factors. So in that meeting at Hurdle's home after the 2012 season, Huntington and Hurdle agreed to adopt what I believe was the most radical defensive alignment plan at the time. They were going to align while they were not the first team to begin practicing defensive shifts, they increased their defensive shift usage by 400% in 2013. And we'll get to what a defensive shift is in a few minutes. They wanted to have more pitchers produce ground balls to be hit into those shifts. And they produced an MLB record of ground balls that season. And they wanted to improve behind the plate in an area called pitch framing, the idea of stealing balls and strikes. And one of the few players they did add was a free agent catcher named Russell Martin, who's another key figure in the book. So, they say the battle is won before it is ever fought, and this is where the plan was put in place after the 2012 season. And I'm going to go to a few slides here with this clicker that I think I can operate. Here we go. So this is from a presentation from a friend and fellow journalist, Sean Lehman, done a couple years ago. And this is the amount of data points per season in baseball. And you can see from the middle of the 20th century, most data was tied to box scores. In Baseball Encyclopedia, newspaper, Sporting News, there was a very limited amount of data. And then as we get to the 1980s, the personal computer becomes of age. We see a slight uptick. The web comes of age in the mid-90s. We see more information. We go from a box score. We move from beyond a box score. We move from player positioning is being recorded, batted ball location is being recorded. And then in 2007, we see an exponential growth when PitchFX, a pitch tracking, an automated pitch tracking system comes online in every major league ballpark, and it records the velocity, the location, the movement of every major league pitch, and you jump up to 20 million data points, and if this extended to this season, we'd be over 2 billion as StatCast has come online, and now every player movement is tracked. So there's this explosion of information. But it happened so quickly, not every team was maximizing this and capitalizing on it. And the Pirates saw this opportunity out of necessity to take advantage of this information from the defensive side of the game. This photograph is perhaps the first defensive shift that we have evidence of, and that was the Cleveland Indians were playing at Boston. Ted Williams, great Hall of Fame left-handed hitter, was batting, and Cleveland was being just decimated by Williams' bat. He was a great player, and it seemed like every game he was, 3 hits, a home run. He was just destroying them. So the Cleveland manager, Lou Boudreau, I believe at the time, anecdotally, he had no information, but just anecdotally, he felt, hey, why don't we position defenders where he's hitting the ball instead of how defenders have been placed traditionally, which is a third baseman and a shortstop on the left side of the field, a second baseman and a first baseman on the right side of the infield. Let's put more defenders where we think Williams hits the ball. As you can see, in 2012 in Major League Baseball, not many teams were placing 3 or more infielders on one side of second base, which is how we define a defensive shift. In 2013, the year the Pirates engaged in their defensive plan, there's a slight uptick with the Pirates producing the most change. And then we've seen the proliferation in 14, 15, 16 of defensive shifts just skyrocket, exponential growth as teams see the value in the batted ball location, defender location, the results it can have. But until this was recorded, managers like Boudreaux were operating only off anecdotal evidence. They did not have data, they did not have information. Today, teams have resources like this. This is every ground ball Bryce Harper hit last season. And as you can see, the majority are hit to the right side of the infield. And it's true of almost every hitter. The nature of a ground ball is they are generally hit to a pull side. It's the nature of the swing, it's the nature of the bat plane. And as you can see, Harper's maybe not the most extreme pull hitter, but even he hits most ground balls on the pull to the pull side. An NL East foe, Jay Bruce, he's an extreme pull hitter. Those are all his ground balls over the last 3 years. And as you can see, most of them, according to the company that is tracking these baseball info solutions, most of these are pulled. So for 100 years, baseball teams had been using conventional alignment. They had just been 2 infielders to the right of second base, 2 infielders to the left. But over the last 5 years, we've seen the shifts, the number of 3 or more infielders on one side of the base skyrocket. And the Pirates were on the cutting edge of this beginning in 13. And just to show you how these are all Bryce Harper's fly balls last season. And fly balls are distributed more evenly. Jay Bruce, last 3 seasons. So fly balls are distributed more evenly, ground balls are pulled. And after the 2012 season, there's this data, the Pirates confront the data, and they decide to move against convention. Let's see Bryce Harper hit into a shift. So traditionally, you see the 3 infielders on the right side of second base. Traditionally, that would have been a base hit. For 100 years, it would have been a base hit, but the second baseman is pulled more to the right, and it's an out. Here's Jay Bruce, is a Cincinnati Red hitting into a defensive shift. Again, a move away from tradition. Big data providing benefits. And here's Anthony Rizzo of the world champion Chicago Cubs being robbed by a diving defender in positioned, thanks to big data and advanced analytics, in a more smartly aligned, in a more advantageous position. So the Pirates were not the first team to adopt, to move away from convention when it comes from the defensive alignment, but they were the first team to have this dramatic increase and combine it with a record ground ball rate. If you're going to align your defense, your infield defense dramatically, you want to have as many balls funneled into that as possible. And again, most ground balls are pulled. So how do you increase a ground ball rate as a baseball team? And this is where data and analytics come in handy again. And teams can track where every major league batter is most susceptible to hit a ground ball, what location, what pitch type. So in that 2012, 2013 offseason, that winter, the Pittsburgh coaches asked their analytics group to research every major league hitter, see where they're most susceptible to producing a ground ball. And this wasn't just a top-down, this just wasn't the front office dictating to the field staff and players, here's the information, do this or else. They wanted a collaborative effort. And not only did they have the information of where hitters were most susceptible, but because of PitchFX, because of the pitch tracking, they're also able to look at pitch sequences. And the coaches asked the analytics staff, what types of sequences most produce ground balls? Not only locations and pitch types, but if we start a batter with an inside fastball, which is our theory, if we begin him inside with the fastball and go away with off speed, we think that'll increase the likelihood that he'll produce a ground ball. So the traditional graybeard coaches asked the whiz kid analysts to research this for them, and their theory was proved to be true. And it was this effort off the mound, this philosophy of pitching inside, of pitching to batters, their most susceptible areas to producing ground balls, putting that in concert with the increase of defensive shifts, allowed the Pirates to increase the amount of batted balls they turned into outs by 3% from 2012 to 2013. That might not sound like a dramatic number, 3%, but there are thousands of balls put in play each year by every team. And by turning an extra 3% of batted balls into outs, the Pirates saved 90 runs without adding $1 to payroll. Again, this is an efficiency problem. 9 wins is incredibly valuable. On the open market today, 1 win is valued at about $8 million in free agency. So getting 9 wins for free just by shifting philosophy, by embracing information available, that was worth, in today's dollars in baseball, is worth about $70 million, and that's real value without any free agent acquisition, without any top draft pick making the roster. So the Pirates won 79 games in 2012. They won 94 in 13, and a lot of that value came from the adoption of defensive shifts and the increase of ground balls off the mound. But they did make one significant free agent acquisition, and that was catcher Russell Martin, a former Yankee. He's now with the Blue Jays. And he was the Pirates sent him to a 2-year, $14 million contract in that offseason. And to show you their budgetary limitations, that was the largest contract they'd ever given to an outside free agent. And a lot of fans in Pittsburgh were curious why they would sign this veteran catcher who had hit just .220 a year before with New York. That's a below average, it's a poor batting mark, batting .220. Why do this guy's washed up. Why are you bringing him in here, coming off a losing season? A lot of criticism for this decision. But the Pirates had bought into the idea of quantifying pitch framing, the idea that some catchers are better than others at manipulating ball strike calls on the fringe of the strike zone. As we know, humans, an umpire behind the plate, calls strikes, and we're all imperfect. We all have biases, and certain catchers who can move gloves subtly, who can catch frame pitchers better than others, create value over the course of a season. And in 2012, the Pirates had according to the analytics, the Pirates had one of the poorest framing catchers in the game, who cost them 20 runs according to the public data that's available. Martin was an elite framer. He saved the Yankees 30 runs with his glove by framing these borderline ball strike calls. And that might seem like an extraordinary number, but the difference between a 2-ball and 1 strike count versus a 1 strike and 2-ball count is 200 points in batting average. So swinging a count by 1 pitch has dramatically increases the odds of an out for a team. And if you do that hundreds of thousands of times over the course of a season, that adds tremendous value. And so while this was, on the surface, by traditional measurements, the Martin signing was very curious. People greeted it with great skepticism. The Pirates were buying in to the pitch effects technology that tracked every pitch, that showed which catchers, where pitches were called balls, where they're called strikes, which catchers got the most borderline pitches called as strikes. And Martin was at the top of the leaderboard. He was a top free agent available who could do that. And again, this was value created. This was efficiency. They paid him $7 million in 13. But the real value he created, if you add in his framing value, he was worth more like $35 million to the team that year. So they're increasing their efficiency. They're adding value. And I think so this is Russell Martin with the Blue Jays getting that ball's out of the zone, and how he subtly receives the pitch. He goes against the movement of the pitch. If it's a fastball moving down and away, he's trying to catch the ball with his glove rising up to give the perception that the ball crossed the plane of the zone. This is Martin with the Blue Jays. I didn't have any Pirates footage available. Here's another example of Martin and there's another pitch that borderline gets called a strike. Batter is not in agreement. That's Francisco Lindor. He has a great, he knows the strike zone. He can discern balls from strikes, and clearly he's upset with that call. So that is another example of Martin's framing ability. So we have the 9 hidden wins from the ground ball and shifting philosophy. Martin adds 3-4 more hidden wins through his glove alone. And all of a sudden, you're seeing a team able to transform its fortunes with few dollars added to payroll by just embracing the information available when most other clubs are not embracing it to the same degree, making real decisions off of this and seeing their wins increase. That's what's great about baseball. You see results immediately on the field. There's perhaps not as much noise as other industries, but it's evidence that embracing this, that being open-minded and collaborating have real powerful, tangible benefits. 4 years later, every team has an analytics department. Every team is buying into this to one degree or another. The Yankees have a tremendous team. The Astros, every team is invested in this. StatCast launched in 2015. And while PitchFX was just tracking pitches, StatCast is tracking pitches through Doppler radar, but it's also using motion capturing to capture the movement of every player on the field, their movement, their first step quickness, a right fielder's throwing velocity, exit speed off bat. And hitters have tools now. Daniel Murphy with the Nationals, he has adopted, in part because of the data that's available, we better understand optimum launch angles for batters. And for 100 years, it's been taught that you want to produce a low line drive as a batter. You don't want to pop up. The uppercut is not ideal. But hitters like Murphy now understand that the optimum launch angle actually does result from a slight uppercut. And he's turned his career around and enjoyed an enormous contract because of in part, data adoption to his swing and his swing plane, changing the swing plane. And he and other players are now better able to lift fly balls over defensive shifts and out of ballparks. Teams, the next generation is team health, wearable technologies. Teams are more curious. When you think about the billions of dollars lost to players on the disabled list, especially pitchers over the last decade, teams are very curious what they can learn about reducing injuries. And Martin is another part of the book. He was one of the first Pirates to adopt the bioharness from Zephyr, which monitors, you wear it under your jersey and it tracks your calories burned, your energy expended during a game. And it lets you know how much work should you do between games. Do you need a day off? Did you hydrate properly? And Martin adopted that in 2014, and by the next spring, a lot of other players had begun wearing a bioharness to help them with performance, to help Martin stay in better shape. And after his 2-year, he maybe in part because of bioharness, he had a career year in 2014. He left the Pirates for a 5-year, $85 million deal with the Blue Jays after the 2014 season. And I think that's a testament to teams buying into the power of pitch framing, in addition to whatever benefits he enjoyed from wearable technologies. And that's where the Golden State Warriors are very interested in wearable technologies. That's where the game is headed. More data, more informed decisions, from efficiency to player health to positioning. And the Pirates 2013 story is sort of on the front end of that, and it's just amazing where we are today in all sports, and we're seeing the benefits, not just in baseball, but the Warriors and the NBA. So I hope it's a powerful lesson. I think companies like Cloudera are trying to make what seems impossible today, possible tomorrow. And it seemed in that 2012 offseason that the idea of the Pirates turning around their fortunes, it seemed impossible with the roster they had at hand, with the payroll limitations they had, with their top prospects not being ready. But it was through the power of information, through advanced analytics, they're able to turn it around pretty quickly in a game that's often very slow to move. So thanks for listening to my presentation. I hope the Pirates their 2013 season can provide some lessons of value to you as an audience. And I know you've had a long day here, so I hope this was a fun way to conclude it. And I'll be hanging around if you have any questions for me, so thank you.